As you may know, we are independent thinkers here. Looking out for you requires that discipline. That being said, the state of liberalism in America is confusing, to say the least, especially in the human rights arena. For example, the record shows that after the 9/11 attack, the USA waterboarded three high-ranking al-Qaeda big shots, getting life-saving information from them. Yet, some liberals still insist that America is a torture nation. The New York Times and others continue to paint the USA as a consistent human rights violator under the Bush administration. No matter how much evidence is presented to prove that is a gross overstatement, the myth is still being perpetuated, even by President Obama. But when a liberal cause is shown to be brutal, left-wing reaction is quite something else. Investigators in Kansas have presented strong evidence that late-term abortion Dr. George Tiller, who was murdered by a domestic terrorist, destroyed viable fetuses for trivial reasons. The former head of the psychiatric school at the prestigious Johns Hopkins University, Dr. Paul McHugh, says flat out that Tiller used a so-called mental health provision to brutally terminate fetuses for just about any reason. But the New York Times, the Miami Herald, the Kansas City Star, and other liberal newspapers have no problem with that. In fact, the Times actually called Tiller a hero. Now think about this. The waterboarding of heinous terrorists who participated in mass murder is called barbaric, but the destruction of thousands of late-term fetuses for casual reasons is called heroic. Now, if that's liberalism, I will never be a part of it. There is no question that what Tiller did was brutal, and it has nothing to do with Roe v. Wade, as the liberal media would have you believe. 36 states outlaw or severely restrict late-term abortion. 4 others have fought the courts to outlaw it because it is rarely necessary and always lethal. And then there's Jessica's Law. Again, very few liberal media outlets support mandatory minimum sentences for convicted child rapists, even though more than 40 states now have it. But the liberal media doesn't want it, although they're inflamed over Guantanamo Bay. Finally, let's go back to Private William Long, assassinated last week in Arkansas by an American Muslim terrorist. Now, I criticize the network news and CNN for basically ignoring the story while ginning up the Tiller murder. As I reported last Friday, I did misspeak about CNN. They did cover the story dayside, but their primetime coverage was scant. In fact, up to the point where I mentioned the Long-Tiller comparison, CNN had devoted approximately 190 minutes, almost 3 hours, more than 3 hours, to Tiller, while giving about 36 minutes to Private Long. That's about a 6-to-1 margin. So there you go. There's no question the liberal media doesn't much like reporting on deadly Muslim terrorism or gruesome late-term abortions where babies are extracted from the womb and a medical instrument driven into their skulls. No, those realities are ignored by many liberals. So who is really looking out for human rights here? The New York Times and their acolytes? Or those of us who want to save as many lives as we can, both inside and outside the womb? That is a memo.